have. He didn't realize that being exclusive and believing there's only one path just couldn't be correct. I bet he was a flat earther too. That's the way postmoderns would scoff at passages like this, and actually do. And I've heard them do that. I've heard Rob Bell, for example, who got a church of 10,000 up in Michigan until he resigned his pastorate and went out traveling full time. I heard him say stuff like this. And affecting the postmodern generation. That's all he had in that church. I imagine 75% of the people in his church were between 16 and 45. They were attracted to this because it resonated with the way they were educated. Boy, is it important that we educate young people correctly, because it's a lot easier to teach them right the first time than to unteach them something and then try to get the right thing in. Why do you think there's such a battle for education today? What about this passage? How do postmoderns view this one? John 14:6. I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no man cometh to the Father but by me. I don't know how you can misinterpret this. I once, in fact, in my Universalism message and DVD, I quote President, I almost said Clinton, but it was President Obama. And he said that, that passage seems very narrow, but it all depends on how it's interpreted. I don't know how you can misinterpret that. Well, how would the postmoderns look at this one? They would say, how could this be? I mean, I know Jesus was supposed to have said all this stuff, but I feel sure he really didn't mean it. After all, there's so many good things about the Buddhists and Hindus, and they're really honorable, and the Muslims are really standing for peace, right? That's the answers you get when you talk about stuff that looks very exclusive in the Bible that says that there's only one path. And here's that Jude passage. It's only one chapter in Jude. So Jude verse 3 says, Beloved, when I gave all diligence to write unto you of the common salvation, it was needful for me to write unto you and exhort you that ye should earnestly contend for the faith which was once delivered unto the saints. Not 2 or 3 times, but once. What would they say about this one? Postmoderns would say, once delivered, oh come on. There's lots of truth in the other religions. That old Christianity is way too narrow and exclusive. And besides, we're new, modern Christians. Science now refutes those old notions. And this is why we have open theism being taught in our Bible schools, right and left. This is why theistic evolution has become a theme in our Bible colleges, because they want to mix together what the world is teaching and what the scriptures say, because they don't want their academic friends in the world to laugh at them. I'm talking about those in the teaching institutions that we have around us in Christianity. What about Revelation 21? This is a pretty narrow passage. He that overcometh shall inherit all things, and I will be his God, and he shall be my son. That's good. This should frighten anybody who doesn't know Christ. But the fearful, the unbelieving, the abominable, the murderers, the whoremongers, the sorcerers, the idolaters, and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. You don't want to be there. How would the postmoderns view this one? They'd say, we are all God's sons and daughters. How narrow to think that God would ever judge anybody. That's the kind of stuff that they're being taught. Besides, this is all just allegory. They think the lake of fire is allegory. And they take the book of Revelation to be completely allegory, even though it's the revelation of Jesus Christ. And Jesus, though he did express himself in parables, people would say he was a storyteller, this is not stories. This is the actual events that are going to take place eventually. God would never throw human beings into the lake of fire. That's an invention of man. He's only a God of love. You know why people think that? Because that's what they've heard from the pulpit so often. Because that's what liberalism has taught for the last 150 years in churches that should have been teaching the gospel but aren't. They only teach part of it. And if you only teach part of the gospel, eventually, you know what you've got? A different gospel. And if all you have is a different gospel, that means you probably have a different Jesus with it too. And if you don't have the right Jesus, I don't care how sincere you might worship him or believe in him, you're going to be lost for all eternity. And Paul warned us in 2 Corinthians 11, verses 3 and 4, if you want to write that down. 2 Corinthians 11, verses 3 and 4. Different Jesuses, different gospels, different spirits. So this passage we just read a few minutes ago, how would postmoderns interpret this passage? This know also in the last days perilous times shall come. What would they say about this one? Postmoderns would say, none of that apocalyptic talk here. We don't want to hear any of that. Remember I told you 65% of the pastors in America, this is the current polling, say they're into replacement theology, or they believe that Israel has no part in God's plan. And then we talked about kingdom now and dominionism. If you believe that you're going to clean up the earth by all of your conciliatory ideas to bring the religions of the world together, and in doing so, by stopping all the wars and stuff in the earth, you're going to bring the return of Christ back, that's kingdom now theology, that we set up the kingdom now on earth. If you believe that, then you can't believe anything that Paul wrote in 2 Thessalonians, or anything in the book of Revelation, or Jesus in Luke 21, or Mark 13, or Matthew 24. You can't believe any of that, or the book of Daniel. You've got to throw it out. Because they don't want to hear about that. They're going to save the planet, save the church, save the world, save everything, and they're going to bring Jesus back in the midst of it. Our missional way, they would say, is to embrace everybody. What? He wants to drive people away? Not a chance. Our tent is bigger than the church of our parents, and we're proud of it. That old-fashioned gospel is offensive, and besides, our seats are full every Sunday. You could draw a crowd a lot of ways. You can. And if all you want to do is tell people what they want to hear, you're going to fill up your seats. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to come to this in a few minutes anyway, but this is exactly what the church growth movement has given us. Because in teaching pastors how to grow a church, they said you've got to cut some of the stuff out of your messages that you're talking about now, such as sin and repentance, and such as hell and Satan. Wouldn't want any of that. That's too narrow. Don't ever dare talk about the end times. What about the very capstone passage in the entire Bible, John 3:16? It is really the capstone of the whole Bible, isn't it? Yes. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish. I was like pointing that out to people who are universalists. Somebody's perishing in here, right? Not everybody is saved. Somebody's going to perish, but have instead everlasting life. That's the gift God gave us through Jesus. What would postmoderns say? That's right, Jesus came to save planet Earth. That's how it's being turned around. We postmoderns know so much more about the environment now. Finally, we can interpret what Jesus was really talking about here. We're going to save the planet and bring Jesus back in style, because they teach kingdom now theology. Yeah, a lot of the professors think they know more about Jesus too, or about the stuff in the Bible than Jesus did. There's a young man, and I got this secondhand, but I believe it's a real account from who I got it from. Young man in Bible school, and he's in the Old Testament survey class, and the professor is going on and on and on about how Daniel isn't reliable. It was written by somebody besides Daniel 350 years after Daniel died, and it happened in the Maccabean period in about 100 AD, or I'm sorry, BC, when that book was written, and they put Daniel's name on it. And this young man, he must have been very brave or gullible, I'm not sure, but probably brave. And he stuck his hand and said, "Excuse me, professor, Jesus called Daniel a prophet. How can we say the book of Daniel's wrong?" And the professor was just incensed that this little pipsqueak in the audience would say something like that to him, this great learned professor. And he blurted this out: "I know more about Daniel than Jesus did." That's the presumptuousness that we've got going on in some of the teaching community. Just imagine. Postmodernism inside the church, and again, I apologize for my voice, is generally known as the emergent church movement, and you've heard me talk about it. I'm not going to reteach and repreach, but I'm going to give you a little bit for those who didn't hear it. And this DVD out there this is the number one selling DVD we've ever had, because other ministries have picked it up and have promoted it and so on too. But the emerging or emergent church movement is the idea that the culture has changed. A new church must emerge to meet the needs of the culture. By the way, if you take market surveys about what kind of church people would come to in your neighborhood, and then you go about to build it, you have aired ground spot. Because you don't take a market survey to find out what the people in a neighborhood would like. You build the church that God shows you to go from His Word. Right? And then you depend on Him to bring people in. See, we have lost dependence on God. And we're depending on all of our good promotion, our wonderful lighting system, and our great PA and our great music, and nothing wrong with all of that. But if we've lost dependence on God to actually fill the seats, something's wrong. The emergent church leaders are seeking a disillusionment of cold, hard fact, and they want instead a warm, fuzzy subjectivity because they say that's what the postmoderns will be drawn to. You know, when the emergent church started, the whole movement came about because of meetings that took place in the Young Leadership Network from Christianity Today magazine. And the Young Leadership Network, they were having these meetings and they were talking about, you know, how do we bring this age group back to church that's missing? By the way, it's not missing in your church. Really, I thought that this morning, how many young people in that postmodern group are in your congregation. But so many churches, you go in and from 16 or maybe 18 to 40, there's not a whole lot of people in there. And they were trying to figure out how to bring them back. This was about 20 years ago now. And they finally deduced that it was our doctrine that was separating people too much, so we wanted to relax our ideas about doctrine. And that's how we got the emergent church. And they thought this was a great way to bring people into the church. So the problem is, if you get them there and you're not teaching them the whole gospel, what good did it do? What good? Just make you feel better because you help somebody fill up the seats? My gracious. Sunday morning Kiwanis Club isn't what I'm into. How about you? And that's no aspersion to Kiwanis, by the way. My dad was heavily involved in Kiwanis, and nothing wrong with it. It ain't getting you in heaven. Emergent leaders believe that evangelicalism and fundamentalism have failed them. Instead, they've decided to embrace the ideas that look like New Age philosophy because they've got a spiritual void. If they don't have God, if they don't have the authentic relationship with Jesus, they've got to have some sort of spiritual experience. This is why they have gone out and endorsed stuff like yoga and all of these other philosophies out there. And now that I've said that, I better explain myself because ask any Hindu yogi if you can Christianize yoga, and they will laugh at you because they understand that this is all about the serpent power of Brahma. And that's one of their gods that they worship. And that's what yoga is based on. And you can't Christianize yoga. It cannot be done. I know there's some great material. We don't have it on the website, but if you want more, just let me know. I'll give it for you. The appeal of the emergent church is to the disenfranchised, the disappointed with the traditional church. Particularly, the emergent church appeals, look at this, to socially minded youth who really don't have an understanding of what the church is all about, and they have a contempt for doctrine, absolutes, tradition, and history. And I believe that contempt has been fostered by the guy at the pulpit who scoffs at stuff such as eschatology, the rapture, the end times.